Hi guys, in this video we are going to go through basically what is involved
when buying a property in Spain. This is a comprehensive guide to buying a property in Spain from professionals. This might sound really basic to you all, but if you're thinking about buying a property in Spain, the first thing that you really need to consider at the very, very beginning of your search is how accessible are different areas of Spain to you, because not all areas are accessible from whichever country you're coming from. Spain's a huge country, it's diverse, there are lots and lots of airports, the public transport system is fantastic, but not all airports in and out of Spain will fly to your country.
and there are not always possibly as many train stations as you may expect as well.
Yeah.
That might tell you a little bit.
The other thing that you need to research is if you find the area that you want to live and you know that it's got a local airport, does that airport function all year round? Because some airports have got a really great service during summer months, but in the winter it might close completely, and these are really important. You might think not if you're moving over here permanently, and okay, it's not as important as if you're buying a holiday home, but you never know when you're going to need to get back in an emergency, and it's always good to know that if you need to get back, you can do without a massive hassle. If you're really set on an area and there's no local airport and there's no local train station, that's fine as well, but you need to be aware of that. Don't just take it for granted that you're going to be able to get here in 2 hours, because it's not always the case. The next question that a lot of you ask is, where are the good areas and where are the bad areas? We can't really answer that for you, because what we might think is a really nice area, you might think it's an absolute dump, and vice versa. We all like different things. We all have got different priorities in what we want our area to have. So that's really a difficult one for us to answer. A good estate agent will guide you around the small areas within areas to avoid and the ones that are absolutely fine. There's not one specific area that I would say is a good area and not one specific area that I would say is a bad area. For those of you that want to immerse yourself fully in the Spanish way of life, the Spanish culture, the Spanish traditions, a Spanish village might be the good option for you. In a Spanish village, you're going to find everything that you want. You're going to find your bars, your restaurants, your supermarkets, doctor's surgeries quite often, and the majority of the people that live here are going to be Spanish people. So you're going to find it easier to pick up the language. You're going to be able to join in on all of the fiestas and see all of the local events and immerse yourself fully in the Spanish way of life. On a downside, the language could be the downside. Because you're in a Spanish village and not so many people speak your language, you might struggle in doctor's surgeries, you might struggle in the town hall and official places. So learning the language, if you're moving into a Spanish village, is really important, and you should have at least the basics. Spanish villagers in this area do tend to have a nice expat community as well, and by expats I don't just mean Brits, I mean lots of different nationality expats. If you're looking to buy in a Spanish village and you want to be in the centre of the village, your property type options are going to be limited also. You're going to be looking at apartments or townhouses. Although we've said that the public transport in the whole area is really good, if you're going to buy in a Spanish village, you need to bear in mind that because you've got everything that you need here, a regular bus service is not considered a necessity. So let's move a little bit away from the dogs. If you want to move to Spain and live the good life, if you dream of growing fruit trees, you dream of having a chicken coop, if you want 10,000 dogs without annoying your neighbours, a rural location might be the great place for you. Rural locations are on country lanes like this. You're away from everybody. Quite often you've got lovely walks to go on. You might have mountain views, nice and peaceful. And rural properties tend to be a lot cheaper than properties in a built-up area, so you get a lot more for your money. They tend to come with huge amounts of land. The downside to rural locations are quite often the properties in rural locations are not attached to mains electricity, they're not attached to mains water, they're not attached to the main sewage system, so you will have a cesspit. You will have to have a water deposit for the water truck to come and deliver water to you, and you might need to have solar panels or generators for your electricity supply. Building regulations in rural locations is completely different to building regulations in urban locations, and a lot of the properties are actually illegal, so you need to check that out 100% to make sure that they're fully legal. The other thing, a lot of rural locations are very remote, so if you need emergency services in a hurry, you need to bear that in mind, because you might not be easy to get to. Although I've said it's nice and peaceful, although it's not nice and peaceful here because of the dogs, hunting here in Spain is a popular pastime. And during hunting season, you might have gunfire all day and all night. And also the hunting dogs sometimes do invade your property, which is a problem if you've got your own pets. But there's a lot to be said about having a rural property. If you decide you want to live in a Spanish city, you're going to be absolutely spoilt by the choice of bars and restaurants and everything else that you possibly can want. Spanish cities tend to have a great transport links to other cities and also close by airports. Lots of people speak lots of different languages, so learning the language is not as important as it would be as if you were living in a Spanish village, but still appreciated.
We're here in Torrevieja. 51% of the people that live here permanently are Spaniards. The rest are all sorts.
Yeah, lots and lots of different nationalities. You'll be able to enjoy all of the Spanish fiestas and the cultural events. So Spanish cities are great on the plus side. On the negative side,
We've spent ages driving around trying to find somewhere to get parked.
yeah, so unless you're buying, we'll wait for the bells to stop. Unless the place that you're buying includes a parking space, parking in Spanish cities is horrendous, as Andy's just said. Unless you're actually buying a place that includes a parking space, it could be that if you're in a city, you can't even own a car.
Having said that, the transport links will be better, so you might not need a car.
Exactly. Spanish cities are really busy. You need to bear that in mind because even something as simple as going to the bank, you could be queuing for hours and hours to see a bank teller. And also, they can be noisy, especially if you're in one of the areas where they're having the local fiestas. And the only sort of property really that you're going to be looking at in a Spanish city are apartments.
As you start to get out, you'll end up with townhouses, possibly some sort of villas maybe, but you will need to start to spread out a little bit if you're wanting places with maybe some outdoor space, excluding a balcony. You will need to get out into the urbanisation.
Yeah. Some people's most important factor when buying a property in Spain is to be close to the beach. And it's beautiful. What's nicer than being able to step out of your property? You're on the seafront, you can have a walk along the beach, you can enjoy the bars and restaurants along the seafront. On the downside, buying property on the seafront comes with a premium. You're going to pay a lot more for a property on the seafront than you are in most other places. And for example, one of these apartments here may cost as much as a villa with a private pool in an area only 5 kilometres inland. The other thing that you need to bear in mind about buying a property on the seafront is that in summer it's going to be extremely busy. Again, parking can be a problem if you've not got an allocated parking space. So it could be that it's impossible to own a car. It's very important when thinking about buying a property on the seafront is that you investigate it out of season as well as in season, because some seaside locations, some beachfront locations during winter months are deserted and all of the bars and restaurants close for the winter season and it's like a ghost town. So if you really want to buy a property on the seafront, investigate first and make sure that the area that you're going to buy in has got bars and restaurants and amenities open all year round. Now lots of people moving to Spain want to come across for the Spanish sunshine and to enjoy their time over here in Spain, but they still want a little bit of familiarity from their own country. For those people, an urbanisation might be a good choice. An urbanisation is basically an housing estate in different areas. They can be close to a town, on the edge of a town. They can be in the middle of nowhere. They can be on a golf course. Some of them have got really good facilities and amenities. Some of them have got bars, restaurants, supermarkets, banks, doctors' surgeries. Some of them have got absolutely nothing.
But don't rule out being on an urbanisation.
Lots of urbanisations have got really good public transport links. Some have got none at all. They're all very different. But because it's more multicultural and Spanish might not be the main language, you're not going to pick up Spanish quite so well as you would do in a village location or in a Spanish city. You wouldn't be getting the same cultural experience as you would do in a village or a city, because you won't get the local fiestas and you'll have to travel out to get those sort of things. On urbanisations, you find lots of different styles of properties. You'll find apartments, you'll find townhouses, bungalows, detached villas with pools. So they're quite diverse and very different. When you see properties here for sale in Spain, they might actually have different names and be called different things to what you're used to them being called in your own country. We'll talk about apartments first. Obviously, we all know what an apartment is. Apartments here tend to be higher than 2 stories. Now, if you see something called an attico, you might call that a penthouse because it's on the top floor. And if you see something called a duplex apartment, that's an apartment that's actually on 2 levels. So when you go into your apartment, you'll have a downstairs and an upstairs. If you see a studio apartment, some of you might know what studios are, some of you won't. A studio apartment is basically 1 room and a bathroom. So your living space is where you sleep, where you've got your living room and where you've got your kitchen. Now you might see bungalow advertised. Here in Spain, a bungalow is definitely different to what a bungalow would be in other countries. Typically, it's like an apartment, but an apartment that's only got 2 apartments, one on top of the other, or a terraced house with just 1 level. You might see upper or lower bungalow, and that's when one property is built directly above the other property, but they're separate apartments. Typically speaking, a downstairs bungalow will have a terrace, and an upstairs bungalow might come with a sunroof or a solarium. Townhouses are terrace rows of properties, so they can be 1 storey and they'd be called a bungalow. They can be 2 stories or even 3 or 4 stories. You might even have another property attached at the back. So you could have a property on either side and a property at the back.
Sometimes you'll have a townhouse where there is a building block, and if you imagine each quarter is an individual property, they're still townhouses, but they're often also called quad villas.
So a villa is what we all think of when we think about Spanish properties. Usually villas are on urbanisations or on the outskirts of Spanish towns, and they're properties in their own ground. Now they can be single storey or multiple stories. They could be detached, semi-detached. They could be linked detached, which I'll tell you what that is in a minute. Or they could be quads, as Andy's just described. So a quad is a square
Looking from the
with
top.
a cross through it, and you get a corner. So you've got neighbours on the back and neighbours on one side, and you've got that square, which is your property. Obviously, detached properties are not attached to any other property. However, a detached property might be attached to its own boundary wall. So it could be a property that you can't walk all the way around, but that does not mean it's not detached, because it's not attached to to the neighbour's property. So we all know what semi-detached properties are. They're properties that are joined to the neighbour on one side. Linked detached are builders being really crafty. A linked detached is basically a detached property. Here in Spain, there are building regulations about plot sizes and what you are allowed to build on a certain plot size. And some plots you're only allowed to build semi-detached properties on and not detached properties on them. So what the builders did to get away with that, they've got the 2 plots next to each other and they build 2 detached properties and they link them with a concrete beam.
Or even, in the case of mine, aluminium.
They might actually be linked by a garage. They can actually link them by a garage and call them linked detached as well. But it's the builders' ways of getting round building detached properties where they're not meant to. It's perfectly legal, but it's not classed as a detached property, it's classed as a linked detached. You might also see villas advertised as chalets. It's older Spanish people that would advertise them as a chalet. Occasionally a villa on an urbanisation you might see advertised as a chalet, but a chalet's more the villas that are on the outskirts of a town, of a Spanish town. A finca is a rural property, but as we said before, you need to be careful when buying a rural property that your legal team check out the legalities of it, because lots of fincas are not legal. It could be that the plot of land that it's built on had permission to have a work shed there, which has been extended
And converted.
and made into a big house. They're rural, they tend to come with lots and lots of land. Quite often they've got outbuildings. They can be really good buys as long as you check the legalities out first. There are some strange building regulations when it comes to rustic land, so you need a solicitor that knows how to check out the rules and regulations in the area that you're going to be buying in, to make sure that you're buying something that's legal or something that can be made legal, because things might not be legal when you look at them, but that doesn't mean that they can't be legalised by the seller before you buy it or at the time of completion. We mentioned about communities. Some properties here in Spain are in communities and some are not in communities. If you're in communities, it usually means that you've got communal amenities. For example, a swimming pool, a lift, communal gardens, a perimeter fence, all sorts of different things that group that bunch of properties together, and you'll have a committee who will look after everything for you. So if you're in a community, you will have community fees to pay for the upkeep of your communal amenities and facilities. So that is an extra expense that you will have if you're living in a community. Some communities, when you pay your community fee, I've heard that they'll even pay for internet and painting of the exterior of the buildings. If you're not in a community, you won't have any community fees, but likewise you'll not have any communal areas. So you'll not have your communal swimming pool, you'll not have your communal gardens. You've got your property in its own right and it's not part of any community. The other thing about communities, when you live in a community, you will have some rules and regulations that you need to adhere to. Some of them can be quite strict. Here in Spain, still there is lots and lots of building work going on, so there are a lot of new build properties available. There are a few differences between new build and resale properties. The main one is the price. New build properties tend to be much more expensive than resale properties, but the build quality has improved greatly over the last few years. The style of the new build properties is ultra modern, so you've got the big windows, the straight lines. Yeah, you struggle to find anything new build that is the traditional sort of Spanish style, unless you're lucky enough to be able to afford somebody to build you a bespoke property, and then you could specify which sort of style you wanted.
The plot on the new builds as well, the plot size is usually smaller than what you would get on a resale.
Definitely, yeah. They're definitely fitting more properties onto smaller plots. Although we've said that build quality might be better on new build, you will certainly get more for your money with a resale, because as we've also said, plot sizes and build sizes tend to be bigger on resale properties. When you're looking and deciding whether you're going to buy a new build or a resale, it might be influenced by your budget and the style of property that you want and the space that you want. New build properties also tend to come with a builder's guarantee. Right, you might all wonder how to choose your estate agent. Well, there are lots of us about. Estate agents in Spain have always had a bit of a dodgy reputation, and I think in the past there have been lots of dodgy dealings to be done. But now it's law that all estate agents in this area of Spain, in the Valencia community, but it does also apply to lots of other areas as well.
Such as Barcelona, Madrid, etc.
Seville, lots of them have got this law in place. We are now regulated. You've got to be qualified. You've got to have done the course. You've got to have so many years' experience. You've got to be registered with the Valencian community. Again, here's our registration number. You've got to pay an insurance policy. Now, this insurance policy it's a public liability insurance policy, so it protects you, the buyer. If you lodge a deposit with us and then something untoward happens, you are insured. These are all legal requirements. It's also a good idea that the estate agent that you choose is registered with a professional body like API. It's a Spanish professional body of estate agents, and they help to keep us regulated as well. You might see some estate agents are registered with, is it AIPP? This is not the same. This is a professional body in the UK. API is probably the biggest professional body of estate agents here in Spain. So ideally, a member of API, but definitely legal and registered with the community that they're working within. For an estate agent to be registered, they also have to have an address that they are registered to and work from. This doesn't mean that they've got to have an office. It doesn't mean that they've got to work from an office, but it means that they are registered from an address so that if anything goes wrong, you know where to find them. Some people that are working self-employed without an office are still legal and registered. It doesn't mean that they're not, just because they've not got an office. Any agent worth your time won't mind spending their time with you before you're actually ready to buy a property. And by that I mean spending time showing you around the different areas, because quite often the area that you're buying for you is more important than the property that you buy. Because let's face it, there's no point seeing a beautiful house at the top of a massive hill if you can't walk properly. It needs to be somewhere that's right for you. The agent that you choose should not ask you to pay any money up front at all. You shouldn't be paying to view properties. Some agencies might say to you that you've got to lodge a deposit with them to actually show you properties. This is completely wrong. If you want to do that, walk away and find somebody else. The only time you should actually be paying any money to an agent is if you found a property that you want to buy and you've made an offer and your offer has been accepted. Then you pay a deposit to reserve the property, but you don't pay anything until that point. When you've actually found a property to buy and you've paid a deposit, that's fine that it goes to the agent or to the seller's solicitor. Either of those is absolutely fine. The fee to the estate agent is not your responsibility. It is a fee to the seller. The estate agency's fee is the seller's fee, and that will have been pre-arranged with the seller before the house is put on the market, and it will be part of the property sale price. So whatever you see the property for sale for, the fee for the agent is included in that, and it's the seller's responsibility.
You shouldn't be paying
an agent's fee, a finder's fee, or anything like that to the agent that you are viewing the properties through.
That's different than if you've got a property finder. If you've just employed a property finder and they're actively searching properties for you around the area and they're going to lots of different agents, they might charge you a set fee for that service. But the estate agent has the contract with the seller, and the invoice is for the seller, not for you. If an estate agent says you have to use their solicitor, you have to use their money transfer company, walk away from that agency, because you shouldn't have to do anything like that. These services should not be obligatory. That doesn't mean don't take their recommendation, because rather take a recommendation from an estate agency that's been there doing the job for lots of years and know lots and lots and lots of different legal people and money exchange companies and know who will do the best job for you. Rather do that than find somebody on the internet. But just as well, if you've got a friend that's bought in the area, you might want to use whoever they've used as a legal representative and their money transfer company as well. If you've been recommended somebody, the best thing to do is to check out reviews online, or just to round it off in a nutshell, you don't pay anything up front and you don't be bullied into using legals or money exchange if you don't want to.
May not understand, because the way estate agencies work in Spain is different to a lot of other countries, significantly different. Uh, and basically, she's going to tell you.
Okay. Here in Spain, people selling properties are not obliged to only use one estate agent. They can use as many estate agents to market their property as they want to. So you might see a property for sale with lots of different agents, not just one agent. And even more confusingly, you might see it for sale at lots of different prices. This is an unfortunate thing, and really a property should be for sale at the same price with everybody, but sometimes it's quite difficult. When a person's got a property for sale with 6 different agents, they put it up for sale at a certain price. If they decide to do a price drop, they might forget to inform everyone for a start that they've done a price drop. It's quite important as an estate agent to try and be on top of your sellers, to keep as up to date as possible. And we do try to do that. But the other way that estate agencies work differently here in Spain is that lots of us collaborate together. So if we have a client looking for a specific type of property and we don't have that property available, we'll look at our friendly agents that we deal with and we'll contact the agents that's got the property available that our client might be looking for and ask that agency if we can view the property. And
This is like us being property finders, and it doesn't cost you any extra money.
no, it doesn't cost you nothing. So we do collaborate. So quite often, other agents bring their clients to us to buy properties, and we take our clients to other agents to buy properties. If you want to work with just one agent, I would recommend, even if it's not us, I'd recommend you working with one agency, because then you trust that agency, you build a relationship with them, they learn what you're really looking for, and they do the job for you. If you've chose your agent and you're only working with that agent, do not contact the other agencies if you see a property that you're interested in online, because then you can't view that property with your agent. What will happen is the other agency will register you as a client, and when your agent calls them to say, can we view this property, they'll say, I'm really sorry, but we've already got that client registered. So you have to view through the other agency. I mean, it might not be a big deal to you, but if you just want to work with one agent, let them do the work for you. If you see something that you like online, let them know, and they will see if the other agency will collaborate and you can view it. Every now and again, other agencies don't collaborate, in which case you will have to view through somebody else. Now, the other thing to be aware of, a few agencies work a little bit sneakily, and they have got properties advertised on their websites that were bargains when they were for sale, but they sold quite a long time ago. They leave the property on the website as for sale because it's a carrot to encourage people to make contact. So although we can vouch for our properties on our website and say that everything is as current as it possibly can be.
And everything on our website, by the way, is direct, it's not from somebody else.
Yeah, we list everything directly ourselves. A lot of other agencies just list other agents' properties. So they'll take a link. For example, lots of other agencies come to us because we have direct contact with all of our owners, but they'll come to us and just take the link for our website and sort of import all of our properties onto their website. So they're an intermediate agent. We're not, we're a direct agent. But like I was just saying, we can't, if you see a property for sale with another agency, we can't guarantee that that property is available until we've contacted the other agent to find out, because some of them do things like that, which I really don't like that. I think that's quite sneaky. Is another thing that helps to give us and our profession a bad reputation.
When it comes to legal representation in Spain, we recommend that you get somebody that, obviously, that's independent of the estate agent, but also
Yeah, because they should be working for you and not for them. That's the crux of it.
also make sure you get one that operates in the area where you're going to be buying.
Yeah, they need to be local to the area that you're going to be buying,
Yeah.
100%. I see a lot of people that go to exhibitions and they actually employ legal representation while they're at the exhibition in a different country. Now, you might find that when you get here to Spain, you want to buy in the Alicante province, and your solicitor is actually in Malaga. Now, here in Spain, there are lots of different autonomous communities. It's a little bit like the United States of America. And each autonomous community have their own parliament, their own government, and their own set of rules and regulations, and also their own taxes. Some taxes are set by the general government, but some taxes are set by the regional government. Now, if you employ a solicitor from Malaga, which is in Andalusia, and you're buying a property in Alicante, the rules, the regulations, the taxes, everything might be completely different. I don't know that they are, because we don't sell properties in Malaga, but I'm just using this as an example. Now, that solicitor might be a complete whiz kid in Malaga, but has no clue what the rules and regulations are in Alicante, and it causes lots and lots of problems. The other thing about using a solicitor or a legal representative local to the area, they'll know the people that they need to speak to in the local town hall, they'll know the little peculiarities of all the different properties in the area, and how to get these peculiarities rectified if need be, because they'll know who to speak to. Somebody from a long distance away won't have that local knowledge, and local knowledge is definitely key to an easy, straightforward, fluid purchase of a property. Although we've said you don't pay anything up front to your estate agent, it is usual for a legal representative to take a fee up front, because they are going to have to outlay money on your behalf for your property purchase, because they might need to get certain certificates in place, like your NIE numbers and everything. So it's right that they will ask you for an amount up front, probably not the whole amount, but maybe half of it. So don't be perturbed if you're introduced to a legal representative and they want an upfront payment, because that's quite normal. Now, we would recommend that you give your legal representative what is called a power of attorney. Now, I'm sure you've all heard of a power of attorney, and it might be alien to a lot of you, because quite often in other countries, power of attorney is associated with people that are incapacitated. They can't act on their own behalf, and you're going to act on their behalf. Completely different here. It's quite a normal thing to do. The reason being, a lot of people that are buying property in Spain don't actually live in Spain. So your legal representative will need the ability to act on your behalf, to arrange things so that your purchase can go through hassle-free. It's a document that's signed in the notary with you and with your legal representative. I mean, you can give a power of attorney to anybody. You can give it to an estate agent, but I would recommend you do it to your legal representative. It can be arranged in your own country, or it can be physically while you're here in Spain at the notary. And that allows, as I said, the legal representative to act as if they were you, with your permission. So they can actually apply for your NIE number. You don't have to be here to do that. They can open a bank account on your behalf. You don't have to be here to do that. They can sign for the completion of your property on your behalf, obviously with your written consent. Does mean that they've got access to your bank account to get the funds, to organise the funds to be transferred to the seller. But this is all normal, and it's nothing to be worried about. It's something, even though I live here in Spain, when I've bought and sold houses, I've got a legal representative who has my power of attorney, and they do it for me with my consent. So that is quite a normal thing to do. And then after the purchase is complete, they can also do things like set up the utility bills for you from your bank account and get the equivalent to the council tax, the annual tax that you pay on your property. You can swap all that over into your name. So that's definitely something worth thinking about before you come over, or arranging in your own country, to your legal representative. Now, you've just heard me mention NIE. What's an NIE, you might be saying to yourself. Now, NIE stands for Número de Identidad de Extranjeros, which basically is your unique tax number as a foreigner, and you'll need an NIE number to do anything legal in Spain, including buying a house. If you want to buy a car, you need an NIE number. If you want to get a residencia, you need an NIE number. If you want to get any sort of hire purchase, you need an NIE number. You need an NIE number to get registered at a doctor's surgery. If you've got children to put in school, you need an NIE number. It's an important thing to do. Now, you can arrange your NIE number yourself, Spanish consulate, or the consular office in your own country, or you can get it while you're over here in the Oficina de Extranjeros.
Or at the police station.
Yeah, certain police stations you can do it also. It only costs €15. It's actually under €15 if you want to arrange your NIE number yourself. But navigating the system to do that is
Getting an appointment to do that.
Is another thing. You need to apply for an appointment. You need to fill in the paperwork and pay for the taxes, which are just under €15. And then you need to navigate the system online to get an appointment, which is very difficult.
And if you know Spanish, it's still difficult to get the appointment.
I mean, my Spanish is quite good, and I think I'd struggle to get myself an appointment for an NIE. You can pay different people to get it for you. Your legal representative will be able to get it for you, and the cost is sort of €100 to €150 per person. So although it is more expensive, it's quite a time-consuming process. And once you've got the appointment, you have to go to the police station or the Oficina de Extranjeros, and you queue for quite a long time and see the official people to get this NIE number. So
you've got to pay the taxes at the bank before.
Yeah, you have to pay the taxes.
So you have to go and get paperwork, then go pay the taxes, then go back with the paperwork.
Take the justification that you pay the taxes. So it's a bit long-winded. You'll find moving here to Spain, anything legal, the red tape and the paperwork is ridiculous. So if you've got somebody to work on your behalf, bonus every time.
But that is possibly the worst part about buying or moving to Spain.
Paperwork,
rest of it,
always. Well, we're in March and look at this.
Having an NIE number does not mean you have residency. And residency does not mean you are citizen. For the UK, there is no dual nationality. There is no English passport and Spanish passport as a rule. Also, having an NIE number does not give you the right to be able to stay in the country any more than current legislation allows. So, as the UK is a part of Schengen, that's a 90 days, 180 days rule.
If you've got an NIE number and you're coming from an EU member state, you can stop for as long as you want to. Although if you stop for over half a year, if you stop for over 6 months, you should really become a tax resident, and that's a completely different thing altogether.
Well, actually, as soon as you hit 183 days, regardless of nationality, you become a Spanish tax resident automatically.
Which means you have to pay your tax. You need to do your tax return here every year and pay your taxes here. But that's a different video. Now, as was just said before, we only actually sell property in the Alicante and the Murcian region. So we can only tell you the sort of costs that you're going to be getting in these areas, because we've just said that Spain's got lots of different autonomous communities, and the costs of buying and selling and things like that are different in the different areas. And even between Alicante and Murcia, there is a difference in cost. When you see a property for sale here in Spain, it never, ever includes the taxes. So you'll see the property for sale, and there are always taxes to add on top. Regardless of the cost of the property, you can be buying something for €50,000 or 500,000. There will always be taxes to add on top. The tax to buy is the transmission tax, which is called the ITP, which is Impuestos sobre Transacciones Patrimoniales, which is it's the tax to swap the property from the old people to the new people. In the Alicante region, that is 10% of the purchase price. In Murcia, it's 8% of the purchase price. So you can see there's quite a difference there. So for every €100,000 that you're paying to buy a property in Alicante region, it's going to be €10,000 extra in tax. Murcia, €8,000 extra in tax.
But that is a tax on resale properties.
If you're buying a new build, you also pay taxes, but it's not the ITP, because you're not transferring it from an old owner to a new owner. You're actually buying it as a new build, so you'll pay either on it, which is like value added tax. That never changes. That's the same all over the country, because that's a tax amount set by the big government in Madrid, and that is 10% if it's a property that's meant for living in. If it's a commercial property, it's 21%, which is the same as the IVA that you pay on services and most goods. So on a new build property, across the board, you're going to pay 10% on top of the cost in IVA, plus you're also going to pay a stamp duty of 1.5% of the property price. You won't pay both taxes on the property, so you'll only pay the ICP on resales, and you'll only pay the IVA and the stamp duty on new builds. As a buyer, when you go to the notary fees are also your responsibility, as is the land registry fee, which is the registration of the property into your name. That's your responsibility. And the land registry varies depending on the price of the property. So it could be as little as 0.3% of the property price for a cheaper property, up to 1% of the property price. Also, land registry will be more expensive if you're buying with a mortgage, because there's a double registration, because they register the property and also register the mortgage linked to the property. So then you pay two lots of registration to the land registry. So that also affects your land registry fee. And notary fees are anywhere between 500 to €1,000 in this sort of area. Again, a little bit more expensive if the property is more expensive. Your notary fees will be a little bit different. So between 500 and 1,000 for your notary fees, and then your legal representation to buy a property is going to cost you anywhere between sort of €1,000 and €2,000, I would say. We have heard of it a lot more expensive than that. But
I've heard of it a little bit less as well.
Yeah, but generally speaking, between €1,000 and €2,000. So that means when you see the price of the property that you're going to buy, you need to allow up to an extra 15% more to cover all of your costs that are associated with buying. Let's use a nice round number. If you're buying a property for €100,000, when you've taken into account, if a second-hand property, let's say, when you've taken into account your transmission tax, your land registry, your notary, your legals, you're looking at about €15,000 on top to cover all of your costs and charges.
So in reality, it's €115,000.
Yeah, if you budget 15%, you're going to come away with a little bit of change in your pocket. But better that than getting to the notary and not having enough money to complete. You might not be cash buyers. You might need to raise a mortgage, and you might say to yourself, "Do I raise a mortgage in Spain, or do I raise a mortgage in my own country?" Now, most banks won't give mortgages to buy property in foreign countries. So the only way that you can raise a mortgage in your own country is if you've got an asset there that you can actually release funds from. For example, if you've got a property that you can remortgage, you can do it that way. It's an equity release. So you remortgage the property that you've got in your own country, the funds are there in your bank, and then you come over and be a cash buyer in Spain. That's one way to do it. So they won't actually lend you money at a bank in your own country to bring across to Spain to buy a property, but there are ways around it.
The term cash buyer doesn't necessarily mean you're bringing actual physical cash.
No, it doesn't. It means that you've got your funds available. If you want to raise a mortgage here in Spain, that's also possible. Most banks here in Spain will lend up to 70% of the price of the property if you're non-residents. Now, residents here in Spain can get up to 80, or even sometimes we hear 100%. But as a non-resident, the most that you can expect to borrow from the bank is 70%. The maximum term of a mortgage is 20 years, and you can actually have a mortgage up to the age of 75 years old. So that means if you're 60 years old and you want to take out a mortgage, the maximum term that you could have a mortgage for would be 15 years, because obviously once you get to 75, the mortgage needs to have come to its completion. The interest rates here at the moment are around about 3%, but that does fluctuate just like it does everywhere else in the world. But if you were to look at this video now, March 2024, 3% in Spain, and then look to see what interest rates are in your own country, it'll let you know where's going to be a better option for you to take a mortgage out. Now, the banks don't just lend mortgages to anybody. They will want to do a financial check on you first, so they'll want 6 months worth of wage slips, or if you're self-employed, proof of income. They'll want 6 months worth of bank statements. They'll want an Experian report. They'll want your social security number from your own country and your identification, like your passport or something like that. They may ask for more paperwork as the mortgage progresses, but to start with, that's what they'll need. And if they'll be able to do a quick check on you, they'll look at your income and your expenditures, they'll look at your Experian report, they'll look at how much you're thinking of spending, and they'll be able to let you know within a day or two whether they would be able to help you with the mortgage. So you sort of get a pre-approval. Once you've found a property that you want to buy, they'll want to send an architect to do a valuation of that property to make sure that the amount of money that they're lending you for the property is not too much. It's very, very rare that they come back too low. Usually they come back just right. There should be no setup fee for a mortgage with the bank. They're not charging setup fees. Usually the bank even pays for the valuation.
When you're looking at what sort of property you want, you need to make a wish list. The wish list needs to be what type of property, what area, does it need to be near amenities such as bars, restaurants, shops, health centre? Does it need to be close to good transport routes like a bus route, that sort of thing? Do you need to be able to walk to the beach? All these things are things you need to consider, as well as does it need to have a private pool or a communal pool? Does it need to be part of a community or not part of a community? Things like that. How many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, and your maximum budget. And to be honest, you're better off being honest with yourselves and honest with your agent to make it easier to be able to find exactly what you want. First and foremost, location is the most important thing. And after that,
Yeah, what you need to do though is you need to put your wish list in priority order. So the most important things towards the top and the least important things towards the bottom. And then you need to decide which things are negotiable and which things aren't. Because some things, it might be that you're not very able-bodied, so 100% you can't have stairs. So that's non-negotiable. But you'd like a communal pool, but it's not a deal breaker if there's not one. So make that list in order and let us know which things you can't negotiate on and which things you possibly could negotiate on, because we'll try our best to find the property that tick as many boxes as possible, but it could be that you've got to negotiate on some things and we need to know which of those things are negotiable. Every now and again we completely exceed the wish list and expectations, and let's hope we can do for you as well. You also need to have a realistic expectations on the sort of thing that you can get for the budget that you've got.
that's the biggest thing.
Don't watch A Place in the Sun from
I was about to
2017
say that, yeah.
and think that you're going to get the same sort of property for the same sort of price now, because you're not.
And I'll be honest with you, the way the property market is at the minute is things are moving fast, very fast, to the point where as soon as the property is viewed and the contract signed with the seller, we've more or less got somebody possibly lined up for it relatively quickly.
Unfortunately for you guys at the moment, it's definitely a seller's market, not a buyer's market.
So the days when you used to be able to negotiate on the price, quite hard, shall we say, are gone. Hopefully some of you guys watching this have actually bought from us. If you guys can leave a comment, that'd be great.
Yeah, we'd really appreciate that. Once you've got your funds available, it might be time to start arranging viewings if you feel it's time to move forward. So what you need to do is send your estate agent your wish list and any other properties that you've seen on other agents' website that you're interested in viewing. Remember, don't contact the other agents directly yourself, otherwise they'll register your details and you won't be able to view through your agent.
If you want to go, with multiple agents,
that's absolutely fine. If you want to go with lots of different agents, but it is quite exhausting because you're running about all over the place.
Ideally, what you want to be doing is looking at no more than, I would say, 5 properties in any one day.
No, because it is mind-boggling and it can be quite overwhelming for people. If you let your agent or your agents make arrangements for you to view the properties that you're interested in, or properties that they think you might be interested in, have a little bit of an open mind and go and see them. You need to make sure that you have the facility to pay a deposit if you see a property that you want to reserve. But remember, don't pay any money up front until you've actually found a property that you want to reserve and you've had an offer accepted by the sellers. When I say make sure that you've got the money available to pay a deposit, you need to alert your bank in your home country that you might be making a substantial payment in Spain. Because if you don't do that, the bank might think that there's some sort of fraud going on, or that your card's been stolen or something, and they may stop the payment and they might even block your card. Before you come away, you need to speak to your bank in your home country and say that you're going to Spain to look at properties, and if you find one that you want to buy, you're going to be making a payment, just so that they're aware of that and that you're able to make that payment if you see the property that you want to buy.
Now, the payments can varies by seller, agent, location actually,
and also whether it's a new build or a resale.
So you could be looking at paying a reservation fee of, and this can be either bank transfer or by a card,
not cash really,
not cash, of either €3,000, €5,000 or 10% of the value of the property.
We usually take a €5,000 deposit to reserve a property, but like I said, not until we've had an offer accepted. Some other agents only take a €3,000 deposit. Sometimes you have to pay a 3 or a 5,000 euro deposit and then within 14 days make it up to 10% of the property value. If you're buying a new build property, it will be completely different, and it will be whatever the developer specifies it has to be.
That can vary.
Yeah, it can vary greatly. Now, occasionally we have new build properties that are what we call key ready, which means that they're completed and ready to move into. But often you're buying a property that's partially built or even off plan. The properties, when they're off plan, you're only seeing an artist's impression.
And make sure if you do buy off plan that the builder has got a bank guarantee.
Yes, they need to have a bank guarantee so that if anything untoward happens, your money's protected. If you decide to buy a new build property, there is no negotiation on the price of a new build property. The price is the price, and you'll not get anything knocked off. So just bear that in mind. Back to a deposit for a second-hand property. You will pay that to either the estate agent or the seller's legal representative. That's where your deposit will go to. If you're buying through a builder for a new build, you'll pay the developer direct, and the initial reservation is around about 5 to 6,000 euros usually. But then you pay in stage payments along the way until you've paid between 50 and 75% of the property value, the purchase price, before completion. So you will be paying quite a lot up front before the property's completed, and then you pay the remaining amount on completion. Now, it's nothing to worry about, it's quite normal, that's how builders work, and they work with stage payments, and that's just how it is. If you're buying a second-hand property, you'll pay your initial deposit to either the estate agent or the legal representative of the seller. You might have to make it up to 10% within 14 days, depending on circumstances, and then you don't pay the rest of the amount due until you complete at the notary, whenever that might be.
Typically, on the second hand, it depends on the buyer and the seller on as to how soon the completion will take place. As an average in this area, the completions tend to take place around about 3 months after the initial reservation deposit, and the reservation contract is signed.
Yeah. So if you see a property that you want to buy, you might put an offer in, or you might pay the asking price. It's up to you. Most people do put an offer in, but as Andy said earlier, it's more difficult to get big discounts on properties now than it used to be, and more properties are actually selling for asking price than used to sell for asking price. So you might try an offer first, and quite often you don't have to, obviously you're not speaking to the sellers, we're going to speak to them on your behalf, and it usually ends up like a little game of ping pong with backwards and forwards until we meet somewhere and everybody's happy. You pay your deposit, and then a purchase sales contract will be drawn up, usually by, if you're buying through us, it would be drawn up by us. You sign it and the seller or the seller's representative signs it. Now, you've paid 5,000 euros as a deposit. If you change your mind about buying that property, it is non-refundable. You will not get a refund for that deposit unless any issues are picked up in the paperwork for the property that can't be rectified before or at the time of completion at the seller's expense. So you can't pay a deposit and then next week say, I found a property I like better, I want my money back, because you won't get your money back. If, however, you pay a deposit on a property and then we find out that a big portion of it's illegally built and it can't be legalised, then of course you will get your deposit back. Now, as a safeguard for you, once the contract is signed by you and by the seller, if they change their mind and decide that they don't want to sell it to you, because after contracts are signed, if they decide that they don't want to sell it to you without a really good reason, I mean, there are some circumstances where they can cancel a sale, but they have to give you your deposit back, but they also have to compensate you with an equal amount. So they would have to pay you 5,000 euros as compensation for cancelling the sale. This almost always stops gazumping. So once contracts have been signed, you've already made arrangements with you've got your legal representative, we've spoken about that earlier. They've got their legal representative. The next thing that we do is we put your legal representative and their legal representative in touch with each other. And really then it's between them to move things on. So things might go a little bit quiet after you've paid a deposit. But that doesn't mean that nothing is happening. It means that everything's happening in the background. And your legal representative is checking the legalities of the property that you're going to buy. So what they're doing, quite often they'll send an architect to look at it to make sure that what it says in the deeds is actually what is physically there in life. And if it's not, it's got to be made legal so that the deeds match the physical appearance of the property. And that might mean that extra architect certificates have got to be applied for, and there is an expense for that, but that's not your expense. That is the seller's expense, and they will have to do that before completion or at the time of completion. The other thing that your legal representative will be doing is checking that there are no outstanding debts on the property. It could be that the property has a mortgage, which of course will need to be paid off by the seller at the time of completion.
They will also check that the person that is actually selling the property is the legally registered person of the property.
Yeah, sometimes properties are being sold after an inheritance, which means that the person selling it does own it, but if they've not been legally registered as the owner, then really they're not allowed to sell it. So there are lots and lots of different checks going on in the background by your legal representative to make sure that what you are buying is 100% legal and you're not going to have any future problems. Although we said that any sort of extensions should be legalised, if you're buying in a community, any extension needs to have permission from the community to be legalised, and that permission can only be given at the annual general meeting. So it could be, if your legal representative knows that you're not going to have a problem getting permission because, for example, you've got a porch put on or something like that, and every other house in the urbanisation have got the same porch put on, they will still let you complete on that property. But what they'll do, so that there's no charge for you, they will retain some money from the seller. So not all of the money that you're paying to the seller will be transferred to them on completion. A certain amount will be kept by your solicitor to pay for that extension to be legalised, and they'll pay for it from the seller's money. So that's nothing to worry about, and that sometimes happens. The checks will be done, things are moving along nicely, you've not really heard much because there's not really much to tell you because these checks are happening in the background. And then all of a sudden it will be action stations. We'll get a completion date. Now it's up to you whether you want to be here for completion or whether you want your legal representative to complete on your behalf using your power of attorney. Either way is absolutely fine. You need to get your funds across to Spain. So how are you going to do that? If you're coming from a country where your currency is the euro, that's easy. You just do a direct transfer from your bank to your bank here in Spain, because you will have to open a bank account here in Spain and your funds will need to be put into your bank account here in Spain. We can help you do that as well. To open a bank account, you need a copy of your ID, like your passport, maybe your social security number from the country that you come from, but really that's it. We can take you to do that in person, or if your solicitor or your legal representative's got your power of attorney, they can do it for you. So back to funds. So easy if you've got the euro, so if you're coming from a European country, not a problem. If you're coming from a country that's not got the euro, transferring directly from your bank is probably the worst way to do it, because you're not going to get a great exchange rate. And lots of people lose money on currency exchange when they transfer direct from one bank in their own country to another bank in their other country.
The bank in your own country might also charge you a fee for doing this, and also the bank in Spain may also charge you a fee for receiving it.
Yeah, so it's definitely not a cost-effective way of doing it. The way that we recommend is to actually sign up with one of the big currency transfer companies. If you check the link below, we'll give you details on how to contact us, and we can put you in touch with the company that we recommend.
Now, we have used, both personally and professionally, quite a few of the companies that's around and about you'll find on the internet in the past. And the reason we use the one that we use is service. The quality of service that you get. There's somebody in country here, and you've got somebody personally on the phone that can help, and they're not on the phone hassling you all the time, which is another thing. Yeah,
some currency companies really do, they really do the pressure sale, which is we don't like that attitude at all. So the company that we use them because they're very professional. They're one of the biggest companies that are doing. Then they're transferring billions of pounds and euros and every other currency every year. They work for some really big companies. The reason that you're going to get a better exchange rate from a company like that is because they're dealing in such large quantities of currency that they actually get preferential rates from the bank, and they pass some of that preferential rate on to you. Now what you do is you open an account with them, then from your home country you transfer your funds into their account with your personal identification number. You've got your unique identification number so they know where the funds have come from, and then they transfer it to your bank here in Spain. Now I know a lot of people are signed up with Wise or Revolut. Now they're great. I've got a Revolut card myself. Every time we go away abroad and I need a different currency, I use Revolut. And I know that a lot of people swear by Wise. And if you're transferring small amounts, fantastic. But there are some issues if you're transferring larger amounts, for example, the amount that you're going to need for a property sale, because you've not got that person on the end of a telephone that you can speak to if you've got an issue. It's online. Also, here in Spain, the company that we use have got officers and people that actually work in our area, so we can speak to them personally. They'll come into the office to see us if we want to. Money laundering is a big issue here in Spain, and they're really, really strict about it. The banks here in Spain want proof of where your funds have come from. And using the company that we use, there is a very clear paper trail of where your money's come from. So it can be lodged in your bank without a problem. Some of the companies like Wise and Revolut, I've heard that the paper trail's not quite as clear. And if your funds go in from one of these companies, occasionally I've heard that the bank account's blocked until you can prove where the funds have come from. Now, if you're sending your funds over and you're going to complete on your property within 2 or 3 days and your bank account's blocked, that is a big problem, because that means you can't get the funds out to actually complete on your purchase.
And you've got nobody's contact because they're based on the internet.
Exactly. So rather use one of the big companies that we recommend than the company like Wise or Revolut. And I'm not saying don't use Wise or Revolut, because like I said, I use Revolut every time I go away on holiday and I think they're fantastic. Now if you sign up with the company that we recommend, also if you've got a pension that you need to bring over every month, you can carry on using it. The account stays open and you can use it whenever you want to. You've got your funds over, you've got your notary appointment. What happens then is that you and your legal representative, or your legal representative with your power of attorney, will turn up at the notary for the appointment to sign for the completion of your property. And also the seller and their legal representative, or the legal representative with their power of attorney, will also turn up at the notary. If you're not coming over to Spain yourself, your legal representative will have been to the bank and will have arranged either bank transfers or banker's drafts from your account to pay for the property. Now, you might see that there is a transfer or a banker's draft made out to the estate agent. That doesn't mean you've paid them. This is deducted from the amount that the seller receives. This is just the way that it's done. So the invoice is made out to the seller, but the funds come from your account. Also, you might see that there's a banker's draft made out to another bank because the seller has a mortgage, and that has to be paid off before the seller gets their money. So everything's paid from the amount that you're paying. So you might see lots of different checks or lots of different banker's drafts and lots of different transfers that are made from your account, but they only equate to the amount that you're paying for the property, and whatever's left is then given to the seller, so that you know everything is paid off before the seller gets theirs and there are no debts or anything left for you to pay. When they're all at the notary, the checks are ready, the transfers are ready, you or your legal representative signs for the property to purchase it, the seller or their representative signs to sell it, and the notary signs to witness it all. And the money is handed over, as are the keys at the same time, and that is when you take possession of the property. The property becomes yours. You will get a copy of the deeds then, but it takes a few months for the property to be registered properly in your name at the land registry, and then you get the proper deeds back after that point. And that's it, you've bought a house. Now, if your solicitor has your power of attorney, they will also swap over the utility bills into your name, and also the equivalent to the council tax. The average time for completion on a second-hand property is around about 3 months, but I've known some complete within a couple of days. and also as long as a year away. Depends on people's circumstances, and as long as it's mutually convenient for everyone, then we can arrange a completion date for as soon or as far away as it needs to be. Now, on a new build property, that completion date could be as far away as 2 years, just so that you're aware, because obviously the property needs to be completed in a building sense first. Now, the other thing that we need to mention are surveys, because some people find it quite scary that here in Spain it's not usual to have a survey done on a property before you buy it. You can book somebody to do a survey for you, but unless you specify how in-depth you want that survey to be, it will come back and it will tell you the age of the property and the material it's built in, maybe the dimensions of the rooms, and that will be it. If you want an in-depth survey done, they are quite expensive. Builders and surveyors here in Spain don't see the need for it. Their attitude is it's been built for X number of years. If it were going to fall down, it would have done by now. And this sounds quite blasé, but that is exactly the attitude. The ongoing cost that you'll have to pay on a property in Spain is something called the eBay, which is, or you might it's called SUMA. That is the property tax each year, which in the UK would be called council tax. Now, here in Spain, it's much cheaper than it is in lots of other countries. So, for example, a 2-bed townhouse here in Torrevieja, you might be looking at around about 120 euros a year. A big villa, a plot of 1,000 square metre with a pool, you might be looking at 800 to 1,000 euros per year. As well as the SUMA, you get charged for refuse collection twice a year. In this area, it's around about 30 euros every 6 months. Now, you will also have non-residence tax to pay. That's a little bit complicated. You've got to pay it by the 31st of December each year, and it is a percentage of the rental income that you make from a property. So if you're making a rental income, non-residence tax for EU members is 19% of your annual income earned from the property as a rental. And for non-EU members, it is 24%. If you're not renting your property out, they will assume you are. They do a calculation whereby they work out 1 to 2% of the cadastral value of the property and do a 19% or a 24% annually of that amount. You'll also have your community fees to pay. They're paid usually every 6 months, but in some communities it might be every month, every 3 months, or annually. And they can be as little as 150 euros a year, right up to sort of 3,000 euros a year, depending on what sort of things are included within your community fees. Now, what problems can you come up against when buying a property in Spain? I've known lots of people do it wrong, me included. One of the problems that you can come across is not transferring your money over correctly. As we've mentioned before, when I moved over, I did loads of things wrong. I came over here 21 years ago and listened to people that didn't really know what they were talking about. I was advised to come over with traveller's checks, which I did, and I got charged for every cheque that I cashed in. So that cost us an absolute fortune. We didn't use a legal representative. So we bought a house without, I mean, it's stupid. You wouldn't buy a house in your own country without using legal representation. So why do it when you come here to Spain? We did. The first house that I bought, we bought without using legal representative, and we ended up paying not only our own taxes to buy, we also paid the seller's taxes to sell, because we didn't know what we were doing. When my mum and dad bought their house, they bought through a big building company and used their in-house solicitor. Now, they bought the house no problem, but when they came to sell it, the house had a previous owner who had taken a mortgage out on the property. And although the mortgage had been paid off, the mortgage had not been cancelled on the property deed. So when my mum and dad bought it, on the deeds it still said that there was a mortgage on the property, and that is a cost to get it removed. Now, the cost should have been for the seller before my mum and dad bought, but because they bought it without that being done, when they sold, it was their responsibility to remove that little note on the deeds saying that there was a mortgage on the property, and that little cost is around about 1,000 euros. So it's quite a big mistake to make. So this is another reason to use a legal representative. If you find a bargain that's really cheap, great, because there are not many of them about anymore, but just beware, there is a minimum value to be declared on the deeds at the notary, and that is in the cadastral register. And if you are buying a property really, really cheap, it could be that you are buying the property cheaper than the minimum declared value. Now, I've said before that you pay 10% here in Alicante and 8% in Murcia on the purchase price of the property. But if you're buying a property for €50,000 and the cadastral value of that property is €100,000, you need to pay the tax on €100,000. And if you don't, you will get fined and you will get a complimentary tax issued at a later date. So these are other things that your legal representative will check out for you when you're buying a property. Especially if it's cheap, they'll check the minimum declared value for you, and you must pay tax on that amount, otherwise you'll be in trouble. If you buy a really cheap property, just bear in mind if you sell it in a few years' time and you make a big profit on it, you're going to get capital gains tax to pay as well. So I think that wraps up our video of buying a property in Spain. I hope it's not bored you too much, and I hope it's not been too much information for you to take in. In the description below will be a link through to the website where you can download the full article on buying a property here in Spain. Also, we can recommend legal advisors, we can recommend money transfer companies, we can recommend insurance companies, and we can help you with everything to do with buying a property here in Spain. Doesn't mean you've got to use our recommendations, but please don't use somebody that you see on Facebook.
And don't forget, if you want to go looking at properties and areas is first. Contact details are in the description or on the website, so you can catch us on social media, and we'll see you in the next one.
Hasta pronto.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.